Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to a new session of your social science children. This is going to be a very new lesson for you in geography. We are going to see about the major landforms of the earth, right? So now we are going to see about what are all the landforms of the earth. So before knowing about that, we should know something which is very more important before going into the landforms. Okay, so first we will see, we all know that earth is the only planet where human beings or any life can sustain, right? But there is no other planet where we can live. Why is it? Because earth has only the essential components to sustain the life. So earth alone has the essential components. What are all those essential components to sustain a life? They are land, air and water. So these three are very important for human beings or even any living organisms to sustain its life. So here each of these components constitutes a separate realm of the earth, realm. Okay, so what does this word realm means? It's a new word, right? So realm means a major biographical division of the earth's surface. So we divide earth based on the nature of the surface. So that is how the realm comes. Okay, so for example, there are surfaces of water, there are surfaces of land, there are surfaces of air. So based on all these, we divide the surface of the earth, and that is what we call it as realms of the earth. So now first let us understand what are all the realms of the earth. So first comes the surface of the land, that is the place where we live, right? So we call this as lithosphere. So the surface of land is called as lithosphere. Okay, so next comes the surface of water. So the surface of water, we can tell it as hydrosphere. Okay, so the surface of water is known as hydrosphere, right? Then comes the surface of air. That is, this is the surface that covers the earth's surface. Okay, this is the layer that covers the earth's surface, and we call this as atmosphere, right? Then comes all these put together. Okay, so you can see land surface here, you can see water, and air is everywhere covered. So all these put together, we call that as biosphere. So these are the major realms of the earth. So there are four. One is lithosphere, which is the land surface. The second one is hydrosphere, which is the water surface, and the third one is atmosphere, which is the layer of air, and the final one is biosphere, which is the mixture of all these three, that is land, water and air all put together forms biosphere, right? So now we will understand what is a lithosphere, what are all becoming the part of lithosphere. So the first comes continents. What is a continent? We all know that a big mass or big area of land surface, we call it as continent, and all the land surfaces in continents. So for example, we all know how many continents are there? Yes, there are 7 continents. We'll start with Asia, Europe, North America, South America, Australia, Africa and Antarctica. So all these are the 7 continents. So all these continents comes under lithosphere. And the surface of land, what are all the surfaces? It can be a mountain, it can be a desert, it can be a plain, it can be a plateau, right? So all these are there in the continents. So all these put together forms lithosphere, right? So next comes hydrosphere. So it is all about water, we have seen. So the oceans. Oceans are the huge surface of water, and then comes any form of water, okay. So oceans mainly form the layer of hydrosphere. The same way there are other forms of water in three forms, that is in liquid, in solid and in gas. Water is there. So when it is a liquid, it is a river, lake or a sea. The same way when it is in a gas, it becomes water vapor, that is also a water particle. Then comes solid, that will be a snow or a glacier or a ice sheet, okay. So all these put together forms the hydrosphere as seen. So what are all the oceans? Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, Arctic Ocean, and Antarctic Ocean. So these five are the very important oceans. These five are the oceans. So all these oceans and other seas and all the surfaces of water put together forms this hydrosphere. So this glacier is nothing but the surface of ice. So you would have seen in some movies also, like ice fully covered a surface, that is the land itself will be in the form of ice, right? So that is called as glacier, surface of ice. So all these together forms hydrosphere. Then comes atmosphere. So this is just a layer about the surface of the earth. So this is covering the earth completely, okay. And there are 5 different layers in atmosphere. First comes troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and finally the exosphere, which you are going to read in detail in your 7th standard, right? So we just will understand first, atmosphere is the layer of air, that's it. Then biosphere. So all these 3, that is lithosphere, hydrosphere and atmosphere, all these meets and interacts, and that is what we call it as biosphere, right? So now we will understand what is ecosystem. The community formed by the interaction of living organisms with the physical environment. So with the environment, living organisms interact. We are in a landform, we are using water, we are inhaling air, all these put together forms the ecosystem. Now we will see what is a landform, right? So the lithosphere, that is the surface of the earth, is not the same everywhere. That is, the earth's surface is not flat everywhere, or it is not up and down everywhere. It is different. It is different on various places, right? So here you can see some are elevated while some places are flat. So some places will be higher and some places will be in a normal surface. So how does this happen? These variations forms the landforms of the earth. Okay, so we call this variation as the various landforms of the earth, right? So first we will see what are the major landforms of the earth. So first comes mountains, then comes plateaus, and the last one is plains. So these 3 are the major divisions of the landforms. So were created millions of years ago by 2 different kinds of forces. So all these landforms, they are not formed yesterday or today. So these are formed millions of years ago, and they are created because of the two forces. One is the internal force and the other one is external force. So due to some force from the earth or above the earth, okay, within the earth, that is from the inner surface of the earth, some force pushes up the land and that forms some landforms. The same way, there are some external forces, that is on the surface of the land, that results in the formation of another new landform. So all these we are going to see in this lesson now. So first we will understand what is internal force and then what is external force. So first comes, before that we should understand the structure of the earth. Okay, this is going to be a very short introduction about the structure of the earth. Anyway, you are going to read about this in your 7th standard again. Okay, so here you can see this is the surface of the earth. So this is the outer part of the earth where we live. Okay, so inside that there is a layer called crust. Okay, so this is the atmosphere above the surface of the earth. Then comes the surface of the earth, and just below the surface of the earth there is a layer called as crust. Then after that comes mantle. Okay, and after that mantle comes core. So in that core itself we have two, one is outer core and the other one is inner core. Okay, so this is just the surface of the earth. So by understanding this only we can understand how the mountains are created or how the various landforms are created. So first we will see about the internal forces. So here the forces that act beneath the surface of the earth are known as internal forces. So the forces beneath the earth's surface, which means beneath means inside. Okay, so any force that comes from the inner part of the earth that creates a land surface, we call it as internal force. Okay, so this is also called as endogenic forces. So how come this forms? The crust layer of the earth contains many large and solid sheets. Okay, so the layer is like a plate. The crust layer is like a large and a thick solid plate. So these plates, what will happen? It will move. Okay, it will move from one place to another very slowly. Okay, so as it moves, this creates a new landform. So we are not feeling that movement. Why? Because the movement is very slow and it is only up to 6 centimeters a year. Sorry. Yes, it is only 6 centimeters in a year. Alright. So as these sheets, just see, this is the surface of the earth and below that is the crust. So this crust moves slightly, slowly it moves. We on the surface of the earth will not feel this movement because it is very slow in the movement. And how does it move? It is just covered, it is just on the surface of the magma which is in semi-solid state. So here you can see the crust layer of the earth contains many large solid plates. Okay, so crust is nothing but large solid plates. So where above which that is there, that is the plate is there above which surface? It is there on semi-liquid layer of magma. So this is a semi-liquid layer of magma. Magma is nothing but the hot molten rock. Okay, so just above this hot molten rock the crust layer is there. So what happens to this crust? As I said, it will move. So here you can see these large solid plates are also known as tectonic plates. Okay, so this is another new term. Note down this word, children. These large solid plates are also known as tectonic plates. So these tectonic plates are constantly moving. So they are moving regularly, but we are not feeling that because it is too slow, just 6 centimeters a year. So for 1 year it moves only for 6 centimeters. So here you can see these movements cause the crust to be pushed up in some places. So as you see, the crust layer, see, if this is going to be the crust, sorry, so if this is going to be the crust, okay, so it is moving from place to place. So what will happen, sometimes when it moves, it may slightly be pushed up, right? So it also, at some places it can slightly be pulled down also. So because of that, there comes different landforms such as fold mountains, block mountains and rift valleys. Okay, so the different landforms, see, the plate is moving slightly, so when some forces push it fastly, it may slightly go up, right? And if some forces is going to pull it down, it will slightly come down. Okay, so this flat surface of the sheet, it can go like this, it can even come like this, right? So that is how we get fold mountains, block mountains and rift valleys. So these are the major landforms which is created because of the internal force of the earth. So first we will see, then we are going to see about the external force. So the forces that act on the surface of the earth, we call it as external force. Then what about the internal force we saw? The force that acts beneath the surface of the earth, that is from the inside of the earth a force comes, that we call it as internal force, and the force that is there on the surface of the earth, we call it as external force, and this is also called as exogenic force. So what about internal force? We have seen it as endogenic force. So here it is exogenic force. Then the external forces. So what are all these external forces? So for internal forces, we have seen that crust is there, magma is there, we have seen, right? Then we have also seen about the core and all those things on the structure of the earth. But the main two things of the internal forces are the crust and the magma. So here you can see the external forces includes rivers, waves, ice and wind. So rivers, the water flows on a surface of the earth, so that we call it as a river. Waves, we all know that it comes from the sea. Then comes the ice, the surface of the ice, it can be a glacier also, and the wind, the air we experience. So all these put together forms the external force of the earth. So these forces change the landscape from earth by eroding materials from one place and transporting and depositing them elsewhere. So this external forces, what are the external forces we have seen? River, ice, wind and waves. Okay, so all these put together are the external forces. So what do? They erode the materials from one place. Eroding means taking away from one place. Okay, so they take away the materials. It can be even a sand. Okay, so for example, when you stand on a beach, right, water comes, then when it goes back, you can see that sand is moving along with the water, right? That is erosion. Okay, so it takes away the material from one place, it moves it, it takes away to some other place. That is called as eroding. We call it as erosion. So when soil is moved like that from one place to another, we call it as soil erosion. Okay, so these materials, they move from one place to another and they get settled in one place. Okay, so by moving from one place, it goes with the flow of the water and in some place it will settle. That is, from there it cannot move. So it settles in one place. So like that, the landforms which are created, we call it as the landforms created by the external forces. Right? So in this process, they give rise to new landforms such as river valleys, floodplains and beaches. So all these are the landforms which are created because of the external forces. So for internal forces, we have seen about fold mountains, block mountains and rift valleys, and for external forces, we are seeing about river valleys, floodplains and beaches. So all these are the landforms which are created because of the external forces. So we are going to understand in our next session how the external and internal forces give rise to a new landform. Right? So we will see that in our next session, children. Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.